I think Kamala Harris has de-risked her finalist list. There's really no mistake in that list. There's no chance of her doing a J.D. Vance selection, right, and just being, doing harm to the ticket. So I do think the blocking and tackling of simple math is Pennsylvania. I think Republicans would be scared to see a governor of Pennsylvania almost instantly flip that state to being, a loss for the Democrats to being a win for the Democrats. I think that then creates regional creep, and you could probably get Michigan to come along in other states. So I do think it creates momentum. But at the end of the day, she doesn't have a liability on her hands with whoever she picks.
We're back with Eddie, Charlie, and Claire. Charlie, I was off a couple of days last week, and I had this moment where I'm like, did he really pick J.D. Vance? It kind of, it drifted from my mind, and when it came back into focus, I was like, I can't believe he really picked J.D. Vance. I mean, this idea of it all being, I take Eddie's, as a former campaign person, I absolutely feel the way Eddie does. You're worried, anxious. But if you are a former Republican and you're looking at the state of the race, where she stands, the list of people she's choosing from, de-risk is a good, you still have to execute and you still have to perform. Right. And David Plouffe also joined the Harris campaign while I was away, which is a really good sign of, again, not about David Plouffe, no disrespect intended, but about Vice President Harris, right? That she's bringing people in. But this idea that she's de-risked her campaign, where on the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who won't even take the risk of attending a debate he already committed to. He's sort of choking on risk and exposure and deciding not to do things because the risk of confronting her is so grave from where he stands. How does he sell that cowardice to his base?
Well, he's flailing, he's fumbling because this race has been reset. So, I mean, there are two interesting things there. I mean, number one, Kamala Harris has a great bench, and she's obviously going through a rigorous vetting process. Obviously, Donald Trump did not go through that vetting process. Instead, he listened to Don Jr., who said that J.D. Vance would be great. And to Eddie's point, the prime directive is do no harm. And yet J.D. Vance is perhaps the most unpopular, most toxic vice presidential nominee, at least in my memory. I mean, he's a drag on the ticket, and he continues to be a drag on the ticket, which is why you have so many Republicans who are having buyer's remorse. But this issue of the debate is, I think, absolutely crucial because Donald Trump wanted to frame this entire choice as strength versus weakness, manliness versus cowardice, right? And yet, who is the brave Sir Donald who is running away from debating a girl? And no disrespect there, but that he is afraid of getting on a stage with a woman. And I think this will remind people that Donald Trump has a very long history of having trouble with strong women, particularly women of color. This is like his worst nightmare. So it's going to be interesting to see how he finesses this. He ran away from the ABC debate that he had committed to. He's proposing the safe spaces of Fox News. But I think people have seen through that. They understand exactly what he's doing, that he does not want to get on the stage with an experienced prosecutor. He thought all year long it was going to be him and Joe Biden, and now it's a completely new world, and he's not ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, Eddie, I don't believe in the ageism that the Trump campaign is sort of structured around exploiting, and neither do I believe in sort of pushing the Joe Rogan-esque levers of toxic masculinity. But Trump does. And Trump has primed his base, again, to not believe what they see. These are quotes, not believe what they hear, only believe him. And what they've heard from him for all these years is that the only world leaders worth their salt, they're not the Angela Merkels, they're not the Emmanuel Macrons, they're the Vladimir Putins, the Kim Jong-uns. They're strong, they kill their opponents. That is how Trump has primed his base. He has also primed them to believe in his vigor. He wanted to pull off his shirt after he barely, it turns out, survived COVID to reveal a Superman. So in terms of what he has put into the bloodstream of his own base of support, it is all the colors and sounds and smells of virility. What do you make of the sustainability of his cowardice to debate Vice President Kamala Harris as a previously confirmed debate?
It's the danger of the revelation that it's all an illusion, that he's the Wizard of Oz, and that behind the curtain he's a small little man. And so part of what we do know, and what the National Association of Black Journalists Conference revealed, is Donald Trump is most comfortable when he's on his field, when he's on his home court, when he's with his audience who's adoring, whose adoration will allow him to speak for 91 minutes. My God, 91 minutes of rambling. How could you deal with that, right? So he's strongest in that space, right? But you put him into another environment. Let him go away and play an away game where the audience is not aren't on his side. Then you see that he shrivels. He becomes really small, and he reaches for the only thing he knows, and that is insult. That is kind of vitriol, grievance, and the like. So I think what we see, not just Fat Elvis, we see the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. And, you know, in The Wiz, which was a different version of the Wizard of Oz, it was Richard Pryor who was deathly afraid. And that's what we see, an afraid old little man.
And again, Claire, I want to make clear that this description of a shriveled political persona is only relevant because of the efforts to puff himself up that we all had to cover every news cycle. The attacks on Mika Brzezinski, the attacks on Megyn Kelly, they're all the misogyny, and then all the racism, and then all of the bullying, and all of the groping of the world's most brutal dictators was all about puffery. And to see him, to quote Eddie, shrivel up in the face of Vice President Kamala Harris is almost confoundingly simple. That it just makes me wonder if he could have been maybe confronted at an earlier point.
Yeah, and she's got some room to grow in this category. The only category really where he has any significant lead on her is perception of strength. And he is undermining that with every step he takes towards hiding under his desk instead of debating. And she is going to, hey, say it to my face, and her other really comfortable attacks on him, where she is just letting it fly and clearly does not see any risk in going after him. I think that's going to be a growth area for her in her campaign. And, you know, speaking of de-risking, I don't understand Trump in this regard. I think he really believes this He-Man thing, like, I need to just get all the white men on my side and I'll be president again. He actually live streamed with a guy today, Nicole, from Mar-a-Lago, who's one of his shticks online is that after a guest gets up from the chair that he's been interviewing, he goes over and sniffs their seat. Now, I don't know who on the campaign thought it was a good idea for him to have this guy at Mar-a-Lago, and the guy gives him a Rolex watch and a new Tesla that's all wrapped in I mean, this is really, I mean, I know we're all tired of the weird thing, but this is wacko. This is really wacko stuff for a guy who wants to be the leader of the free world. And I don't understand what these supposed good campaign operatives that are running his show, what are they doing now? Are they just sitting in the corner sucking their thumbs?
Well, Charlie, I want to give you a quick last word on this. I think it's time to examine our own sort of mythologies, right? There's a mythology around Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles because the Trump campaign was better than when Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner and Corey Lewandowski ran it. I mean, I think we have to sort of test all of our own relative assumptions that we've been making.
Yeah, because it's always about the candidate, stupid. It's always about the candidate. Whatever campaign you put together, it's still Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is going to do his thing. And this is the problem. There's no new Trump, there's no change Trump. And the Fat Elvis part of him is that he's going back to his old playlist, figuring that I'm going to go back to the things that worked for me a decade ago, and they're not landing anymore. There is weird cognitive dissonance. It's just not working. And it's not up to his campaign to figure out what to do because they're stuck with Donald Trump.